Welcome, everyone. How wonderful to be together across this evolving world. We are one mountain, many paths, where our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni call the planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphony. We are activating a new human and a new humanity and awakening as a new species. Homo amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapien. We are a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a zendo. No one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. I am Kristina Tehel, the co-executive producer, along with Krista Josepha, Jacqueline Clark, and Jamie Long, and we are so delighted to be with each and every one of you today and to gather for week 260, 5 whole years without missing a week of our live broadcast. What an honor and a privilege it is to be part of this global community that contributes to humanity's flourishing. Yesterday, 11 of us met to explore the course, Becoming a Future Human, with Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Marc Gafni and Daniel Schmattenberger, where we dove ever deeper into understanding the new universe story and what is needed to become a future human moving forward. There is one more week to join us. So if you're interested, do reach out to Jamie Long to participate, whose email is in the chat box now. These courses are on our website, onemountainmanypath.org, along with many excellent books like Soul Prince by Dr. Gafni, where he brings wisdom to the secret of living your story and how we do this by identifying our unique selves or our soul prints. Only then can we connect on a deeper level with the world and with those sharing it alongside of us. Using the power of story, Dr. Gafni offers advice on how to overcome the obstacles of an increasingly disconnected world to form bonds based in truth and in love. We are looking for transcribers, editors, and translators, and reach out to Krista Josepha, whose email is in the chat box right now, for many holy opportunities. Use the Zoom or Facebook chat function to say hello, to let us know where you're from, and to resonate the dharma. Make sure that on Zoom, your chat settings do say everyone so that we can all hear from you. Sign up for and read our weekly emails. There you'll find our replays, our community activities, feature videos, volunteer opportunities, celebrations, and surprise and inspiration. Now, for what to expect today. We begin with the Dharma recap from last week's One Mountain, Many Paths, and then Dr. Marc sets our intention, and then we'll hear from Krista for a surprise today, and then David resonates our Evolutionary Love Code, and then we move into our sermon with Dr. Marc and sometimes from Barbara Marx Hubbard, and to close, Krista will invite us to commit our outrageous acts of love and to contribute our gifts to this revolution. And on the end, we do bring everyone on for a little dance party and to say goodbye. Marc writes Evolutionary Love Codes. Marc and Barbara studied the codes together, comparing them with Barbara's own 52 codes for conscious self-evolution. These codes grow out of their radical commitment over 100 collective years of, quote, crystallizing and evolving the course of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love, unquote. We have the privilege, the deepest privilege, of front row seats in the emergence of these first principles and first values. As Dr. Marc Gafni often says, the dharma gates are open. Every week, we are blessed with an explosion of brilliant new dharma to serve each other and the evolution of love the best way that we know how. We are committed to the quality of what we are communicating, and for each of us to take part in this creative process of articulating a new story for a new humanity. We have consciously decided that to forcefully try and end at exactly a certain time won't serve the evolutionary process. So instead, we're making a promise for what we call fullness and explosion, to let magic evolve. So even though we will do our best to end right at the top of the hour at 11 a.m. Pacific time or 1 Eastern time, we sometimes will go over. Of course, if you need to leave, please do and listen to the replay. I especially welcome anyone who's new today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Each of our communions are a standalone, and every week builds on the week before. We here at One Mountain, Many Paths are so radically committed to telling the new universe story. So here goes my One Mountain, Many Paths recap from last week. Healing the global intimacy disorder through a new story of value rooted in first principles and first values. Evolution whispers through us. We live in an intimate universe. Homo sapien is yearning, trembling to birth the new human and the new humanity. Homo amor. This is the greatest moral, erotic act of our time. Just as dystopia yawns before us, so does utopia. Unbearable beauty, gorgeous new truth, wondrous, unimaginable new goodness, new structures of intimacy and of love, new structures of what it means to be a human being. Any intimacy we participate in is part of the larger field of the intimate universe. We can't go back to the old stories. We need new stories of value rooted in first principles and first values, and that neither works by itself. This is an evolutionary move, trembling before God, bringing first principles and first values together. We're making a source code changing move. Freedom is a first value and first principles of cosmos. How do we inject reality with freedom, with values that are not made up? It's got to be real value, just like in a couple. If intimacy breaks down, we've got to retell and re-narrate the story, to remember the pieces of the story forgotten. When we come together and we are in new relationship, that space between us, a new God is born. The deeper the relationship, the deeper the quality of godness that's born in that space in between. We are responsible in our relationships, not just to our small selves. We are responsible to the space between us that does create an intimacy that never was, the new God that we birthed. Each of us as a unique self are God's unique intimacy. In the science of biofield health, they know that an individual's health is not just us as separate self-organisms. They value that we are a part of a larger biofield, interacting fields of energy and information that surround living systems. We are part of a larger field of meaning. There is an Akashic field. Its insides are lined with love. There's a larger field so that my story, your story, our story expands. You can't heal the source code. You can't move us the next step. You can't deal with existential risk or heal the global intimacy disorder without a universal grammar of value. When we see the murder of George Floyd story, for instance, we see the violation of life, the violation of first principle and first value, not as a statistic, not as a theoretical idea, but as an embodied story. We explode into the streets because the violation of a story of value rooted in first principles and first values is what arouses political will. The central image from the interior sciences that we're placing at the center of what we're calling the new story is the understanding. Our life is a text, sefer, or story. Life is our sacred autobiography, and we are changing history. With that, I welcome you into the holy and sacred space of one mountain, many paths, and I turn my word to you, Dr. Marc Gafni.
Thank you. Oh my God, right? It is so good to be together. Thank you, Kristina, to Health, for that gorgeous recapitulation of the Dharma. And let's set our intention. We're here in this moment, poised between utopia and dystopia. We're in this time between worlds. We're in this time between stories. We're in this Renaissance Da Vinci moment where the old structures are breaking down and the new hasn't been born, and we're faced with plague and pandemic as they were in Europe, the Black Death. But more importantly, we're faced by exponential plague, by exponential pandemic, by capacities to end the human story. So we're at the edge of the story. There's a human story that's gone on throughout history. And we've come to the edge of the story. We've come to the place where the story can self-terminate. We've come to what can be the 11th hour, the final chapter of the story. And we don't want the story to end because we know that we're covenanted with the past, that we've picked up the great baton of the past, and that all of the unfinished creativities and all of the unfinished loves and all of the unfinished lives need to continue. So we're picking up, we're in the continuity of generations. We're completely committed to the gorgeousness of the present, to almost 8 billion people's hearts pulsing on the planet. And we feel the trillions of generations yet unborn whose only voice in the manifest world is us. Wow. And so we're not prepared for this story to end because this story is about life. And when we talk about a commitment to survival, and when evolutionary psychology talks about we're driven by survival, that's actually disingenuous. Survival is a formal word, but what does survival mean? It means I want to continue living. It means I want the story to go on. And I have this intuition that my life serves a larger story, that my life itself personally is not over when it's over, that I actually get recycled, reincarnated in a larger cycle of life, and that the story of humanity itself has ontology, it's real, it has value. and that we participate in the unfolding of that story. So where are we now? We're in this moment in which we're at the edge of the story. That's called existential risk. That's called dystopia. That's called facing potential apocalypse. And at the same time, we're at the edge. The story is also pregnant with new birth. Our crisis is a birth. So the story is pregnant with new birth. The story is pregnant with new possibility. It's no less true that all of the energy that lived in the first nanoseconds of the Big Bang, in that great explosion, that great flaring forth, all of that energy is here in cosmos, and that energy actually infuses us and suffuses us. And when we allow it and we become conscious of it, that energy intoxicates us in the best way. And we have the capacity to participate in the evolution of the story, in birthing new possibility, because evolution's intrinsic essence, right? Evolution's infinity, evolution's unfolding of the love story of the universe. Evolution, the love story of the universe, right? Evolution unfolds the possibility of possibility. That's what God is, right? God is, divinity is the possibility of possibility. So we're poised, friends, between utopia and dystopia. And from that place, I want to just set an intention, and I want to do it by picking up where we left off in our last One Mountain Gathering podcast conversation. We told a story, and the story was about a master, Israel, son of Eliezer. And when there was a crisis in the world, in order to birth the next stage, he would go to a place in the forest, and he would have a particular fire that he lit, and he would speak a prayer, and the crisis would birth new possibility. Right? And then he dies, and his master, the Maggid, the great master of Mesrich, a town in Eastern Europe, can't remember where to go, but he knows how to light the fire, and he remembers the words of prayer. And so when he, as the leader of the generation, is confronted with crisis, that's what he does. He doesn't know where to go. He's forgotten the place, but he knows the words, right? He knows how to light the fire, and he does so, and the crisis is averted, and there's a great new birth, right? Great new possibility. And then he passes, right? And his student, right? The master of Sasov, right? He doesn't know where the place is, and right, he doesn't know how to light the fire, but he remembers the prayer, and so that's all he has. He speaks the prayer when a crisis comes, and somehow that's enough, and the crisis is averted, and a new possibility is born. And then finally, when he passes, and his successor, Israel of Rizhan, right, doesn't remember, right? A crisis comes, but he doesn't remember where the place in the forest is, and he doesn't know how to light the fire. And he doesn't remember the words of the prayer. He doesn't know what to do. And he says to himself, let me just tell the story. We have the story, and that will be enough. So we, friends, are in the generation after these masters. We've forgotten the story. We don't have the story. We have to recover the storyline. We've lost the narrative arc of our lives. And can you feel that, friends? Feel it into your own life. What's the narrative arc of my life? What's the thread of my story? And we feel very much like Kafka prophesied, right, in his great book, or his book, The Trial, right, in which, right, the protagonist K, right, can't track the storyline. Things are happening, tragedies, threats. His heart's broken all over the place. He's heading towards his death, and he can't quite figure out what's the thread of the story, what's the plot line, what's going on. And friends, that's where we are in this moment. In this postmodern moment, we've lost the thread. Now, that's everything. Because as we pointed out in the first of these conversations, a couple of weeks back, this is our third conversation, we pointed out that the only response to existential risk, which is rooted in win-lose metrics, generator function 1, rooted in complicated systems where all the parts are dissociated from each other, generator function 2, and those two generator functions are rooted in a more profound root cause, a global intimacy disorder. Wow. And we understood that diagnosis was radically hopeful because it tells us how to transform it. We have to heal the intimacy disorder. And how do we do it? The way you heal every intimacy disorder, personal, collective, or global, you actually tell a new story, right? A shared story, a story that's real, right? A story of value rooted in first principles and first values. And that sense of being part of a shared story, a shared storyline allows us as individuals, allows us as a couple, allows us as a country, allows us as a global community to reclaim the thread, to find our way out of the labyrinth where Theseus goes, right? The hero of modernity to slay the Minotaur, and he gets lost. And Ariadne says, right, Ariadne, the feminine, right, the storyteller, the weaver, the tailor of Eros, Ariadne says, take my thread, and my thread will allow you to find your way back out of the labyrinth, your way back to story. That's what we're committed to here at One Mountain, Many Paths. We're committed to healing suffering. And we understand that you cannot heal suffering at the level of infrastructure adjustments. You can't even heal suffering at the level of social structure. Infrastructure means, right, the infrastructure of economics and policy and law, and that's all really important. You can't do that. Infrastructure can't heal suffering. Even at the level of social structure, the level of how our social systems work, you can't heal suffering. You have to go to the level of superstructure. It's the superstructure, and the superstructure is the story. It's the story. What's the guiding story? What's the thread? And if we can recover the thread of the best of the stories that came before, that were insufficient to take us home, and we can actually tell a new story, weaving together all the new elements of the best of the sciences, the interior sciences and the exterior sciences, as a heroic act. It's the most heroic act of this generation, right? It's the utterly necessary act if we are actually not to come to the edge and end of the story. The only way, and here's the paradox, and with this we end our intention, and we turn to Krista, right? But let's hear this again. And let's hear this, and it's profound and it's wondrous. The only way to avoid coming to the end of the story is to tell the new story. Because the end of the story, I mean, the old story was insufficient to not self-terminate. So we need to actually tell a new story of what it means to be a human being. Homo sapien needs to emerge the next step. And the next step is a new story. We're going to talk about what that new story is and some of the parameters of it today. But telling the new story, right, is the great act of this generation. And it's the one act in our capacity which can actually address suffering. Because when you change the storyline, you change the vector of everything. The one human act that changes the course of history and changes everything all the way down and all the way up in every dimension for every human being is you change the story. It's the changing of story that changes the course of history, because history is his story, right? It's a story. It's going in a certain direction. When you change the story, you've evolved the source code. And that's how you address suffering. So this moment, friends, when we can feel both the ecstasy of goodness, right, that suffuses the planet, the billion acts of kindness, and yet we also feel the yawning dystopia that's real and the immensity of the suffering. And we're willing to open our hearts and take that suffering, and we say, we will not be silent. We won't repeat yesterday. We won't turn away. And the way we're not going to turn away is to tell the new story. Okay, so here we go. What a gorgeous joy to be with you. Krista, tell us how to get involved, how to play.
Yes, thank you, Marc. And before we continue, in like 10 seconds, Dr. Marc Gafni will continue, but I just want to make sure that we all feel the depth of this privilege and the responsibility to make sure that the story does continue. And I want to invite all of us, and we invite each other, to step in more powerfully every week. And the way to do that is by becoming a member of One Mountain and to make our contributions and to share our resources for this revolution, to make this revolution happen together, because reality brought us here together every week. And she is gifting us with this privilege and responsibility to make sure that this story is articulated and is enacted in this world. So let me show you how to do that. You go to onemountainmanypaths.org, and when you arrive there, you click right here on membership. That's where you can read all about becoming a member, becoming a part of this beautiful, beautiful community, this band of outrageous lovers, where we have study groups where you can study the Dharma together. As a member, you get access to these 9 beautiful in-depth courses to really make this new story your own, so you can become an enactment of this new story in your unique corner of the world. So go to onemountainmanypaths.org, sign up, become a member, and I cannot wait to see you inside. And with that, let's continue this evolutionary journey. And I give my word to you, beloved David.
Thank you, Krista. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So this is where I resonate Evolutionary Love Code. And the Evolutionary Love Code is actually a crystallization of the entire teaching of today.
I like the beard. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, well, it's getting grayer and grayer.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. Go ahead. Okay.
Thanks, Marc. Thanks, Marc. So this code is actually a crystallization of Marc's teaching. So we're going to hear from Marc, and as we resonate this code, let's let it resonate within our own personal story here. And I put it in the chat box as well. Reality is not merely a fact. Reality is a story. Reality is not an ordinary story. Reality is a love story. Reality is not an ordinary love story. Reality is an evolutionary love story, an outrageous love story. And your story, your outrageous love story, is chapter and verse in the universe, a love story. Reality is not just an outrageous love story. Reality is an outrageous love story, which is a story of value rooted in first principles and first values. Existential and catastrophic risk generated by complicated, not complex systems and exponential technology cannot be addressed by a new story alone, and cannot be addressed only by first values and first principles. Existential risk can only be addressed and transformed by first values and first principles embedded in a story of value. Or said differently, a story of value rooted in first values and first principles. And your story, your evolutionary love story of value rooted in first principles and first values, is chapter and verse in the universe, a love story. And with that, I'm delighted to turn my word back to you, beloved Dr. Marc.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Friends, part of the story is the knowing, and it's a wild knowing, right, that we live in an intimate universe. And you can feel it, right? The synchronicities of reality are just the bare outline, right? The universe is in a constant process of making love. Meister Eckhart, all of reality is kissing in every second. What is an atom? An atom is an amorous aggregation, right? An atom is an allurement between separate parts that love each other at the level of matter, right? Love evolves from matter to life to mind, but it's a love story, right? Atoms are a love story. Molecules are a love story. Cells are a love story, and they're unique love stories. So we have this understanding that not only is reality a story, but reality is a particular kind of story, right? It's a love story. The universe colon a love story. It's an amorous cosmos. And that amorous cosmos, that cosmo-erotic universe, right? That intimate universe is not only the place in which we live, and this is not a declaration, this is the best understanding of the integrated sciences, but it's the best right? Let's just really get this. It's huge. It's the best understanding of the integration of all the leading validated insights from all of the sciences, interior and exterior, crystallized, not in a slogan, right, but in a second simplicity, right? A simplicity after the complexity, right? A heavily footnoted second simplicity. So you can actually I can actually open my body, my heart, and mind and trust this. Reality is not a fact, it's a story, right? It's not an ordinary story, right? It's a love story, okay? It's a love story, but it's not an ordinary love story. It's not love which is exiled only to the human realm, right? It's love as the animating plot line of the story, right? So we live in a love story. That's unimaginable. It's unimaginable. And we're going to talk about this a little bit after prayer. And your story is chapter and verse in the universe colon a love story. So I want to just get what that means for a second, and we're going to go into prayer. But I want to just open up the space for prayer in a particular way. Okay? Let's see if we can get, and I'm taking a look at my phone, and I'm looking for a text that I sent someone the other day, which is about this. So I want to just notice with you that the word love and the word story are allured to each other. Can you feel that? It's a love story, right? Love story and story, they go together. The realization that my story is real, it has real value, and that it participates in a story of larger value is everything. And that the infinity of intimacy who knows my name, let me say that again, the infinity of intimacy who knows my name, right? The personhood of cosmos. You can call that personhood of cosmos the incessant personal creativity of cosmos. You can call it Christ, right? You can call it Atman and Brahman or one. You can call it Adonai hu Elohim, right? You can call it, as Rumi did, the beloved or the friend. But it's the personhood of cosmos who participates with me in my story. And that's not a religious fundamentalist idea. That's actually the quality, the nature of cosmos itself, right? And that at the very core of everything is a love story which explodes, which flares forth in the first nanoseconds of the Big Bang. In those first nanoseconds, the love story, like all stories, generated by allurement, right? Parts are allured to each other. Explosions until the first stable relationships are formed. And those first stable relationships create new wholeness and new depth. And then from that new wholeness and new depth, even greater, deeper, wider relationships. There's an evolution of love. We go from subatomic particles to atoms, which are allured to each other, forming new wholes. Atoms allured to each other, forming new wholes. Molecules, right? Particular unique molecules allured to each other on specific dates, forming new synergies of wholeness, new constellations of eros, new configurations of intimacy. And then those macromolecules intensify their intimacy. And they awaken to even more wholeness and more depth and more love and more aliveness. We call those cells. And then cells, right? And at each stage, there's a crisis, and it's always a crisis of intimacy. So the cells run into a crisis of intimacy, the oxygen crisis, right? When single-celled organisms are almost wiped out on the planet and life almost comes as we know it to an end. And then evolution steps in, the incessant, ceaseless creativity of cosmos seeking greater depth and greater love. and we have multicellular organisms. There's this explosion, there's this new possibility. That's the story that we're participating in. Now, Eros, love, doesn't remain static through the whole thing, right? Love evolves. So Eros, love, this movement towards greater wholeness, this movement towards deeper intimacies, deeper shared identities with mutualities of pathos and mutualities of purpose and mutualities of value and mutualities of recognition, because that's what intimacy is, right? Intimacy equals. That's the intimacy formula of the interior sciences that we've put together, right? Which parallels E equals MC squared, right? In the exterior sciences. Intimacy equals shared identity in the context of otherness, plus mutuality of recognition, plus mutuality of pathos, plus mutuality of purpose, plus mutuality of value. So there's this progression of intimacies, right? We live in the intimate universe. All the intimate universe that came before us, from those subatomic particles all the way through matter, life, and mind, live in us. So the intimate universe lives in us. And there's a storyline, which is evolution is not just the movement from simplicity to complexity. Evolution is the progressive deepening of intimacies. Like, wow, right? Like, wow, right? Wow. So at the human level, we evolve love. We learn to love in new ways. We evolve intimacy. We know how to be intimate in new ways. And it's those new intimacies, right, that actually heal and transform reality. Now, that's true on a political level. We need a new universe, right, which generates new politics of Eros, but it starts between us, right? And I want to say something completely new. It starts in the most intimate space between us. And I send a friend of mine a text who's going, through a particular moment in life. And here's what I wrote to him, a young man. I wrote to him, and it'll seem audacious at first, but listen with me, okay? Okay, are we in? Are we okay? Who's up for listening? Okay, we'll just open our hearts, okay? And I'll open my heart with you, and we'll meet in this one heart and one love, right? In this one breath together, okay? So here we go. I wrote his name, and I said, love me today more than you've ever loved me before. Isn't that a crazy thing to write to someone? Love me today more than you've ever loved me before. And I wrote him, I'm loving you that much right now. Right? And then I wrote him, I'm deep in practice. And as I practice now, and I wrote you, my friend, from that practice, I remember what one great Hasidic master, Hebrew mysticism in the 17th and 18th century, what one Hasidic master said beautifully. He said to his students, he said, I will let you close enough to me to love me unconditionally. I'll let you close enough to me to love me unconditionally. Isn't that strangely paradoxical? Seems to be easy to let a person love us madly, but that's not true. To let someone truly love us personally, deeply, uncompromisingly, takes our pure God human self, right? So imagine, and this is the fuel, this is the energy, this is the Eros that drives one mountain. Imagine if we could look at each other and meet each other right now and say, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Wow, right? Can you feel that with me for a second? It's like, who's talking, right? Who's talking? So I want to just see, can we go to the chat box for a second? And can we find each other? And can we say to each other, are we willing to say to each other, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally? Can we say that to each other? I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally, right? Love me all the way, right? We think that other people aren't loving us along the way because there's something in them that doesn't have the capacity to love, right? But actually, that might not be where the story breaks down. Where the story breaks down is that there's something in me that's blocking you from loving me. So when we talk about the progressive deepening of intimacies, which begins with the world of matter and goes all through the world of life, from the physiosphere to the biosphere, into the world of self-reflective human mind, and then the evolution of love through generations, till we get to a new place. We can actually find each other in a new way. We can actually enact the new human and the new humanity. I want to gently, with your permission, with like so much humility, with so much gentle permission, but with so much audacity, suggest that the core of the new love story is that we write each other and we say, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Oh my God. Or we write each other and we say, right, love me more than you ever have before. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. I'm willing to open up that much. Right? Who can feel that? Is that like, wow? Is that crazy audacity? I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Right? That wildly. That's what it means, right, to become homo amor, to move from homo sapien to homo amor. It's not just egocentric love. It's not the conditional love that I have for my family peeps and my couple of close friends. It's not because they give me my sense of identity and the people on my love lists happen to also be the people on my survival lists. What a coincidence. It's not just ethnocentric love, right? The love of my group, my community, my in-group, and everyone else is in the out-group. It's not even just the love of, the abstract love of humanity. It's the personal love for every human being. It's the personal love for all sentient being, right? No human being is a stranger to me, right? What homo amor says is there are no strangers. There are no in-groups and out-groups. There are no those that we cast out in order to give ourselves, right, the pseudo-erotic illusion of being inside, right? We actually say to each other, there are no strangers anywhere. We're all already friends. Right? There's no one outside the circle. There's no one outside the circle. And that's what it means, right, to live in cosmocentric intimacy, right? To love it all open, no strangers. And the beginning of that turn, and this is the first time we've talked about this in this way, right? This is the next turn in the love story of reality, is between human beings, for us to be willing to say to each other with radical audacity, which almost makes no sense. It almost stops your mind, right? That's what a genuine realization stops your mind. If you try and think conceptually about what you're saying and what we're saying, it won't work. Allow your mind to freeze for a second. Let's freeze our minds, right? In order to unthaw our minds, in order to unfreeze our minds, in order to soften and to see each other with soft eyes. So this is the sentence. I want to get the sentence again. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Okay, so can I tell you something? Will just blow your heart open. When you get this realization, it just blows your heart open, but I want to just ask you permission. Okay, you can't quite get it conceptually. Conceptually, it doesn't quite work. You got to get it at a deeper level of what's called the eye of the spirit or the eye of the heart. And it's an evolutionary realization, right? God, right? We always say that the God you don't believe in doesn't exist, right? The God that chased you, right? When your mother was mad at you and you ran into the bathroom and, your mother's pounding on the door to let her in so she can spank you. And you're 2 years old and your mother says, God's going to find you in there also. That God doesn't exist. Right? The God who's the ethnocentric, homophobic God doesn't exist. Right? The capricious God who kills indiscriminately doesn't exist. Right? God is the force of healing and transformation in cosmos throughout time and in all dimensions that knows your name. But even deeper, right? God is the possibility of possibility. But even deeper, God is the force and reality that says to us, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Can you feel that? Who can feel that? Right? God is the force and reality that's so naked, so raw, so vulnerable, so pure, so without artifice, so without ego, so without manipulation, So without instrumentation, turning the other into an instrument. Oh my God, can you feel that? God is the force of personhood in cosmos that turns to us and says, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Oh my God. Can you feel that? Wow. And to be the new human, to be the new humanity, it's not just about what we've talked about so many times and so importantly and so beautifully, that I become an outrageous lover, that I commit my outrageous acts of love. Yes, that's true. We're going to talk about that in depth in our next broadcast, in our next conversation. But now I want to, with permission, everyone, please, with permission, I want to invert it and just get the full wild audacity of it, right? To be your God self is to say, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally, right? Right? Wow. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. I was like, wow. I'm willing to be that pure, that open, that true, that real. That's what a love story is, right? Love is the actual quality that moves cosmos. Love is real and the story is real. Wow. So we're going to turn now to the infinity of intimacy that knows our name. Right, to the power of cosmos that says, I'm willing to let you love unconditionally. And here at One Mountain, Many Paths, we're all about creating a new language and creating a politics of eros and creating a new evolutionary path. But that evolutionary path can't be only human-centric. We're not alone in the cosmos. It's a wild cosmos in which the music of the divine is playing in all of us, in which traces of transcendence live everywhere, in which rumors of angels abound. We're not by ourselves. Reality is an intimate universe, and the source of this universe, we can feel it in ourselves, is the infinity of intimacy that knows our name. The infinite desires to be intimate. And that infinite that desires to be intimate lives in you and lives in me, right? And your desire for intimacy is infinity's desire for a new intimacy through you. You can actually create a new quality of intimacy through living and being your unique self, your gorgeousness, your unique quality. And when you and I come together, and when you and you come together, and between you, you create a new quality of intimacy, you create a new God. And when you create that new God, then infinity experiences itself through you as a new intimacy. Right? That's the source code of the whole thing. And I know friends, right? Right? How many of you can feel this? I know it's deep. It's so deep, right? And I just like, I'm not, if I can be like on my knees before you, like I beg you, like a beggar in the street. Right? Like a beggar in the street. Don't hear this conceptually. Let your conceptual mind drop and let your heart burst open. Right? I beg you. Right? Right? Here it is. Right? The infinity of intimacy turns to us and says, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. And then she says one more sentence. And I love you that madly and that insanely. And I'm willing to hold all of you. I'm willing to hold your holy and your broken. Hallelujah. Right? And rest in me. And then we turn as the infinity of intimacy to each other and we say to each other, right? Oh my God, I love you madly, fully, outrageously. And I'm going to hold your holy and broken hallelujah. And you're part of my circle of intimacy and no one's outside the circle. Right? That's the new chapter in the love story of reality that moves us from the rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics in which everyone's a stranger, and I remain even a stranger to myself, split off from the one heart, split off from the one life, split off from the one breath as I remain a hollow man, a hollow woman, a stuffed man, a stuffed woman, gesture, right? Without form, paralyzed, right? No true motion, right? All feeling deadened. de-eroticized. But if I can move beyond that, I can open my heart. Oh my God, I open my heart. And with my heart, I know the truth, right? I'm a God self. My story infinitely matters. My story is chapter in verse in the universe, a love story. And my story is not, as my friend Maria Popova wrote this morning, auto-generated. My story is not a fiction. My story is not a capricious, desperate human bid to put together a tale told by an idiot full of sounds and furies, which really signifies nothing, but I'm going to make it signify something and pretend because that lends my life a heroic sense. No, that's not correct. The reason I experience the value and the infinite depth, and the reason every twist and turn in my story rips my heart open, is because my story matters. My story is a unique story of divinity. God lives a dimension of divinity infinitely and uniquely through me. I'm an individuation of the infinite. I'm God's unique intimacy, right? And when I'm God's unique intimacy, I become divine in that realization. And just like divinity turns to reality and says, oh my God, I love you madly. None of us is a stranger. And then God whispers in our ear, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. And that's what the great traditions are saying. Yes, the great traditions got a lot wrong. Yes, they got stuck in surface structures. Yes, they misunderstood some really key things. That's all true. But at the depth of the great traditions, and in the great traditions, I include the best of the spiritual traditions, but I also include the best of modern thought at its deepest and the best impulses towards new value and postmodernity, right? The real understanding is, the real statement, the real credo is, I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally, right? If you let that in, it actually will shudder your body beneath the appearances of ego and blow you open, and blow me open, blow each other open, right? I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. And it's not just two people. I want to play you something, okay, for a second. Okay, I want to play you something for a second. I want to look at a clip just for 1 second. And then from there, we'll finish with prayer. I want to look at a clip for 1 second. We're going to study it for a second. It's from 2009. And my friend Alexander Rybak is at Eurovision, right? And he's singing a song. And music is the language of cosmos. And almost all music tells a story. And the story is almost always a love story. And so Rybak, and we're about to hear it whenever you're ready, friends, right? He does this story called Fairy Tale. And I want to look at it with you for a second to see what it tells us and what it doesn't tell us, and how we take the next step in evolving love and telling the new love story, right? The fulfillment of Homo sapien as Homo Amor.
Years ago, when I was younger, I kinda liked a girl I knew. She was mine, and we were sweethearts. That was then, but then it's true. I'm in love with a fairy tale, even though it hurts. 'Cause I don't care if I lose my mind. sadder, but no one else could lift me high above. I don't know what I was doing when suddenly we fell apart. Nowadays I cannot find her, but when I do, we'll get a brand new start. I'm in love with a fairy tale, even though it hurts, 'cause I don't care if I lose my mind, I'm already cursed. She's a fairy tale, yeah, even though it hurts, 'cause I don't care if I lose my mind, I'm already cursed.
So what's this about? It's an incredible clip. Okay, can we find it, everyone? What's this about? So when the actual love story of the world breaks down, when we forget that reality is a love story, when we lose the narrative arc of cosmos as we go into modernity, so we try and replace the amorous cosmos, the universe, a love story. We try and replace it. We exile love to only the human realm. Then we exile love to only one dimension of the human realm, which is romantic love. And then we exile love to one dimension of romantic love, which is infatuation, right? The falling in love of the fairy tale. And we say that's what love is. So when the story of cosmos breaks down, which is the eros of cosmos, the knowing that reality is not merely a fact, reality is a story. Reality is not an ordinary story. Reality is a love story. Reality is not an ordinary love story. Reality is an outrageous love story. When that breaks down, when the eros of cosmos breaks down, then what happens is you've got to create a pseudo-eros. And the pseudo-eros is the romantic story. Now, not that the romantic story is not true. It is true. Of course, the romantic story is true. But, and this is the next part of the code, and your story, your fairy tale, is chapter and verse in the universal love story. And that's what Alexander Rybak can't figure out. He's beautiful. He's gorgeous. Is he gorgeous? He's gorgeous. He's beautiful. Is that violin just kind of stunning? Oh my God. And do you see that kind of look in his eyes as he kind of plays there at the end? It's gorgeous. And it breaks down, right? Alexander himself, right, broke down. And he couldn't quite hold it. He didn't know where the thread of the story went. And he spent the last 10 years, right, trying to deal with addiction and all of its complexity and pain. Right, and about a year ago, checked himself in to try and actually find his way, right? Because that moment, that high, that win-lose metrics on the stage in Eurovision was gorgeous, but it wasn't part of a larger story. Rybak is gorgeous, and I actually would like to reach out to him and talk to him because, I mean, what a violin and what a human being, and it doesn't work. Let's look at the words, right? Years ago when I was younger, I kind of liked a girl I knew. She was mine and we were sweethearts. That was then, but then it's true, right? I'm in love with a fairy tale, even though it hurts, because I don't care if I lose my mind, I'm already cursed, right? That story can't hold. If your love story is exhausted by egocentric love, as gorgeous as it is, by you loving one person, and you're placing it all on that story, and for you to be loved right, you've got to have that person relate to you in a particular way. And if they don't, right, you're somehow out of sorts with reality, then that story is going to break down. That story is going to collapse. The romantic story can't hold us, where we don't know what love is anymore. We don't know what I love you means anymore. It's our sacred credo, but it's lost its meaning, right? That love story, that romantic story, that fairy tale comes alive again when you realize that love is real, and that the story is not an accident. The story is an ontology, right? The story is an expression. Your love story is chapter and verse in the universal love story. Readback goes on, every day we started fighting, every night we fell in love. No one else could make me sadder, but no one else could lift me higher. I didn't know what I was doing, but suddenly we fell apart. Nowadays I cannot find her, but when I do, we'll get a brand new start, right? The pathos. We know they'll never meet again. We know it'll never come together again. So it's the tragic pathos of searching for the beloved who was never real. When romantic love becomes the only place that love lives in cosmos, we've reenacted idolatry as a modern possibility. Romantic love is gorgeous. What could be more beautiful? But romantic love is an expression of the narrative thread of cosmos. I'm loved madly. I'm loved madly by reality itself. No one's a stranger to me. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally, I say to every human being. And from that place, I become a mad lover. That's what Rumi said when he said, love mad, because that's the only sanity. To love mad is not to pick one person and to say, that person is all of my love. No, to pick one person is gorgeous. But through that person, I love everyone and I love everything. Right? Yes, of course, there's gorgeousness, right, to the dyad, right, of he and she, of Krishna and Radha, the Heros Gamos of God and Goddess. Of course there is. But it's the Heros Gamos of God and Goddess. Right? Jack and Jill are God and Goddess, are he and she themselves. And through every act of human loving, I'm stitching together and evolving, doing a tikkun, a fixing on the ripped asunder fabric of cosmos itself. Every act is a cosmic act. Every sexual act is cosmic eros performed in the flesh. Every act of love, of outrageous love, right, is another chapter, another verse in the narrative arc of cosmos. Now, when you love that way, that's outrageous love, right? And that's an outrageous love story. See, what we've done today and what we're doing in these weeks is we're defining, what do we mean by an outrageous love story? What's the difference between an outrageous love story and a fairy tale? The reason the Princess Leia, right, and Luke Skywalker love story in the original Star Wars began in the mid-70s, right? Episode 4, first movie, and it's gone through 10 movies since, has become the great blockbuster myth of reality, is because the love story of Leia and Luke, right, brother and sister, right, the love story of Hans and Leia, right, the love story, right, the love stories, right, between brothers and sisters and beloveds and between friends, the gorgeous love between friends, right, that weave together that saga. Those love stories are chapter and verse in the force, in the eros that unfolds reality. Your personal love story, I mean, just to get what that means, let's get it together. Your personal love story, my personal love story, is actually a chapter in God's love story. It's a new intimacy. It's a new God that never was. When you awaken to that truth, that's what it means to love your way to enlightenment. That's realization. And then your personal love story completely changes. And then your personal love story opens up. And then you realize we're much bigger and much larger than just a particular set of traumas and what my mother did or didn't do, and a particular victim story and a particular trauma story, right? We're all so traumatized, right? We're all so traumatized. We got to let go of the trauma. I'm going to finish with one thing, and we're going to conclude with prayer and and Claire, right, today, just beautifully. So I wanted to tell you one last story. Do you remember Arabian Nights? Who remembers Arabian Nights? Anybody? Arabian Nights, or 1001 Nights, that great Islamic story. So the king, what was the king's name? What was his name? Right, I jotted it down this morning. I can never pronounce it though. What was the king's name? Right, the king's name is Sharyar or Sharyahar. So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. So the king's first wife is quote unquote unfaithful, whatever that means in that story, right? And in the tragic pre-modern version of that story, and of course, being faithful is beautiful and gorgeous, but she's unfaithful and we don't know exactly what that means. We don't know what their covenant was, but he's devastated. He has her killed. And then what he does is he's so traumatized, right, by this constructed story in which he's been betrayed that he marries a virgin every night. He's with her for the night and he has her beheaded in the morning, right? That's Arabian Nights. And the king's visor has to find women of noble birth to bring to the king so he can be with them for the night, and he has them beheaded in the morning so they won't betray him. Right? You understand? That's who we've become, right? We're not willing to turn to someone and say, love me unconditionally, right? We're afraid to be that open because we don't want to be betrayed again, right? And every time we cry for all the times we've never cried before. And every small betrayal, we feel every betrayal, every time we've betrayed or been betrayed, right? And so the king, he's not willing to feel that again. He doesn't want to be betrayed again. So he has mad passion with the virgin of noble birth at night and beheads her in the morning, right? The violation of the feminine, right? The violation of the goddess. And the visors run out of women of noble birth to bring to the king until his daughter, Scheherazade says, I'll go to the king. And the father's horrified, but she says, no, I'll go to the king. And there's nothing he can do. The king accepts her offer and she goes to the king and they make love, but the love is not discussed in the story. But she says, let me tell you a story in the middle of the night. Tell me a story. And she starts to tell him a story. And the story is gorgeous because Scheherazade was this great learned woman who knew the sciences and knew literature and knew poetry and knew music and knew the arts of laughter and the arts of love. She's the great courtesan of she. And she tells him the story. And as dawn comes, they're still in the middle of the story. And so the king delays her execution because he wants to hear the next night the story. So she returns the next night and they make mad and wild love again. And she finishes that story and then starts a new one before dawn. And then dawn comes and again, the king doesn't want the story to end. He's right, because story has allurement. Story arouses our will. Story transforms us. And for 1001 nights, Scheherazade tells the Sultan 1,000 stories. And by the end of the 1,000 stories, his heart's opened. He's fallen in love again. And the kingship and sovereignty and the great love story of reality is restored. Friends, right? He had to get beyond his trauma story, beyond his ego story. That's the story I let go. There's a story I've got to let go of. It's the false construct. It's the victim story. In the coming weeks, Terry's going to talk to us about the victim story in one of the future, right, conversations. Are we willing to let go of that story? Are you willing? Am I willing? Let's look at each other. Let's stand for reality now. Let's be erotic mystics. Are we willing for the sake of the whole? Who's willing? Let's find each other in the chat box. Who's willing to give up that story where I'm afraid of being betrayed, so I keep betraying the potential virginity of my life and beheading it every time it arises? Every time there's a virgin moment in my life, every time there's newness, every time there's new possibility, I behead the moment because I'm afraid that I'll be betrayed by the new possibility. Wow. Who's willing to give up the trauma of our past betrayals? Right? Are we willing? And that's what it means to play a larger game, right? Are you ready to play? Are we ready to play a larger game? Are we ready to participate in the evolution of love? Are we willing to give up the fear of our revirgination, of our second innocence, of entering post-tragic consciousness and feeling the newness of possibility and making love again to reality like we never have before? And so you know what the first thing is that we do, my friends? This is the first thing. Oh my God. The first thing we do. What do? We turn to each other and we say, I'm going to be so open. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Right? I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Right? Oh my God. I'm going to bring you all of me. And you're going to bring me all of you. And we're going to love each other like that. Right? The holy, right? And the broken. Hallelujah. Oh my God. So it's 2:10. 2:10. And I'm going to ask us just to meet in the chat box. And we usually do Leonard Cohen. We're a little late, so we're not going to do the Leonard Cohen chant, but just in the chat box, right? Just for the last second, right? Who's ever willing to write, this is the prayer, right? I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Who can just write that? If you can write that, that's our prayer for today. Right? That is a prayer. That statement is a prayer. It's a prayer itself. So who's ever willing to kind of take the time now and let your finger do the walking, our prayer is, our statement is, our credo is, and let's blow open reality. Right? Let's do it like let's love like we never have before. Let's participate in the evolution of love. Let's tell the new story. There's no strangers anywhere, right? No strangers. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally, right? Oh my God, I'm willing. Who else, right? Who else? I'm willing, right? Blow it open. The gates are open. Let's open them like they've never been opened before. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally, like I've never opened it before. Can I open my heart like I've never opened my heart before? Can I be a virgin? Right? Completely innocent. I'm willing to let you love me unconditionally. Okay, so just in the last minute, and then I'm going to turn to Claire, who's going to give us just something gorgeous. But just the last second, okay? Right? Our chant. Together? Yeah? Right? And maybe someone can mute themselves there for a second, whoever. Okay, perfect. Okay? Our chant's just simple, just like last week. Ninna nai nai, ninna nai nai, hey hey ho. Ninna nai nai, ninna nai nai, hey hey. Oh, together. Oh, ninna nai ho. Hey na hey, na ni hey, na ni na ni na hey 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 ho, hey na hey 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 na ho. Hey, hey, ho. For you are the master of liberation. You are the master of consolation. You are the master of liberation. You are the master of consolation. Hey, 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 oh, we open all the gates. Hey, oh, may it be the will of reality that we wrote today a new chapter in the universal love story. Claire, take us inside. Take us to the next and last step. Thank you, everyone. Oh my God, what a crazy, wild privilege and honor to be with you. Thank you. Amen. Ja.
Thank you, Marc. What a privilege to be here. Thank you for this amazing weaving of the new story. Friends, I am delighted and excited to let you know of an opportunity to study with Marc, to study in a small, dedicated group of students during our new upcoming yearly study group. I just want to be sure that you all know that this study group exists. It's called the Dharma Circle. It's been going on for about 10 years, a little more maybe. And this is an incredible group of practitioners. Some of us have been in this group for that amount of time. So it is a field, a deep field of practice, and you are invited to join us. It starts in 2 weeks. The format and all the information is available on our website, and I'm sure someone is going to put that information, in the chat box. But here, I just want to emphasize on the fact that this is really the only unique opportunity to study with Marc, except from his one-on-one Holy of Holies, which are limited because, as you know, Marc is dedicated to writing the new story. So he doesn't have so many of this one-on-one students. But here in this format, you can really study at the feet of the master. And so that's one reason to join the Dharma Circle. The other reason is to enter this deep field of practice that we hold with Shahad Korten and myself. And yeah, it is practice is the way we are going to live this story, and we are going to bring it in culture. And it doesn't have to be hard, and it doesn't have to be lonely. This place, the Dharma Circle, is the place to study and practice together. And Shahad and me have a lot of experience in creating practices and holding that field. So you are invited to join us. We start in 2 weeks, and I hope to see you there. And I hand it back over to you, Krista.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, and I can also affirm and really recommend to join this study group. It's an amazing space. We have one last super important step for all of us, which is the invitation to participate in this evolution of love by committing our outrageous acts of love. And in the past 2 weeks, we've been in this journey of sharing beautiful clips with you that David Eitan has created, which are Affirmation clips, which is this new universe love story spoken by Dr. Marc Gafni and Barbara Marx Hubbard. And it's a beautiful way to listen and to let this new story wash over you. And I want to invite all of us to take like 10 seconds to look at this third new clip that we just premiered at the top of this hour. And then I want to invite you to share it with a friend and to invite one of your friends to join us here next week, because as Dr. Marc Gafni always says, the genuine litmus test for pleasure is our desire to share it with others. So we bathe here every week in outrageous love. And what would our world look like if we actually step in and have the courage to speak this outrageous love in our unique corner of the world? So we're going to watch this clip. We're going to share the links in the chat box. I want everyone to go to the chat box, find that link and share it on your social media. And after we are done, we are also sending you in an email this clip so you can forward it to your friends and make sure that your friends show up for the Evolution of Love next week. So while we are doing that, let's take 10 seconds to look at it right now.
Reality needs me.
I'm ready to join my love with God's love as an aspect of the entire process of creation.
God lives in me as me, and God also holds me. Not just I am God, right? I am God, yes, divinity lives and courses through me, and God also holds me. And I also bow before, right, the great force that manifested me. And I have humility, right, before the larger force. Right, I feel the force. And I know that the force knows my name and intimately caresses me, right, and needs my partnership, right, and loves me madly and holds me whenever I fall.
Yes, let's stop right there. Thank you, David, for creating this gorgeous, gorgeous clips. Isn't it just beautiful? So let's go to the chat box again and share it. So each and every one person, human being in this universe knows this new universe, a love story. Right now, we're going to end like we end every week together, bring all of our beautiful faces onto the screen. So we will invite you to become a panelist so you can turn on your video and we can see each other while we are listening to some dance music. So turn on your camera, move your body, shake your body, and let's celebrate this outrageous love revolution together. And we will see each other again next week. Thank you so much. Kristina, please start the music.